I'm Robert McCready, and this is the 18th episode of Evening Magic. And I've got Carla Damron with me, an author in South Carolina. Hello, Carla.
Hi, Robert. It's so nice to see you.
It's good to see you too, and it's good to be seen.
Yeah.
So, we went to Queen's University of Charlotte and we got MFAs, but at different cohorts.
hmm
But when you got your MFA, you were already an accomplished writer,
I was already a writer.
right? And accomplished. You had a
Yeah.
series.
I had a series started, right? I had three books in a series. Yeah.
Um, and that was a mystery series.
Right. It's the Caleb Knowles mysteries. They're all the main character's a social worker like me, and they all deal with social issues.
What made you want to pursue an MFA?
Well, after I had written those books, so I was actually still working on the third one, I decided to try something different. And I wanted to write a women's fiction book with braided narratives, braided points of view. And I started drafting it and real quickly figured out I just did not have the skill set I needed to write this book, that I just needed to learn more about the craft. So I started looking at getting an MFA, and I wanted a low residency program because I work and things like that. And so I started reading about Queens, and I was really impressed with the focus on craft, not to teaching, not pedagogy, but on making yourself a better writer. And so I went there mainly so I could finish that darn book. The first 200 pages was my thesis.
All right. And do you feel like that you got the skills that you needed?
I did, but I'll say too that I think the more you know about writing, the harder it is. There's something to be said for just being dumb and just stumbling into it. But now it's like you learn to analyze scenes from different perspectives, from the micro perspective, the macro perspective. You're looking at tension, you're looking at balance, you're looking at metaphors and narrative flow and all of that. And I didn't do that before. So now it's like, but I absolutely feel like it helped me become a better writer. I have no doubt about that.
What is the most important technique that you have learned as a writer that you could share for other writers that would help improve their writing?
So probably the most important one is, one button chair. I mean, I should get that tattooed on me somewhere. Butt in chair. You have to just sit down and do the work. Um, but then experiencing especially when you're revising and editing, experiencing it different ways. So, print it out and read it, load it to a Kindle and read it, but most importantly, listen to it. So if I'm revising, I will load it on my cell phone, and when I'm walking, I listen to it. I'm on the treadmill, I listen to it. Just let those words come to you. You absorb them differently. You'll see problems that you might not see just reading them. Just let all your senses be involved in this.
I agree with that. I think you're exactly right. I write my stuff to be read aloud. I don't have anything on Audible, but I know that eventually it will be on Audible. And I've had a couple of people tell me that they read my stories twice while driving in the car. And that's perfect because it is made to be read aloud. And I had another friend who said that she went somewhere with a group of friends and they were reading my dialogue because they said the
Oh,
dialogue was so good. And I felt good about that because I
yeah,
read it to be read and also to understand the dialogue when it's being read to you.
exactly, exactly.
Because
I
sometimes it
have
can get confusing.
so
Sorry.
the women's fiction book is out on Audible, The Stone Necklace, and I'm right now screening voice narrators for an audiobook of The Orchid Tattoo. So because I want the same thing, I want more people are experiencing books that way. More people are listening to books than ever before. And if I want to expand my audience, I feel like we need to be available that way.
Oh, that's such a good idea. The orchid tattoo, I feel like that blew up on social media.
Yeah, it's done well, and I'm pleased. I'm very happy about that because it's got a message I want people to hear. And so yeah, I've been real pleased that it's been successful.
I'm glad to hear that. Just before our interview, I was looking on Twitter and I saw where a man got arrested in Texas. And he was some kind of administrator or something like that. And he was involved in child trafficking.
There we go.
And I think it was a professor. And you know what they found in his emails?
I'm scared to ask.
I'm going to go ahead and say it, but it's going to push the show in an angle. He used the term pizza to to traffic the children.
So he's a QAnon dude.
Or well, not the QAnon people. I think were the conspiracy theorists. They came up with Pizzagate because people were
Right.
ordering $20,000 worth of pizzas, but they found in his personal emails when he was getting children, it was it was he used the word pizza. I'm looking at my phone right now so I can find it real quick because it's actually a news story. It's not
It's amazing what traffickers do to pull these kids in. I mean, they are so clever and resourceful in what they do to. So, for people that don't know, my book is about domestic human trafficking, and the main character is a 15-year-old girl who gets pulled into that world and is trying to escape it. So, and it kind of analyzes the different ways that girls are groomed to, or kids are groomed to get pulled in by these traffickers.
it was a Texas A&M University employee arrested on child pornography charges. FBI uncovers use of quote unquote pizza as code word in chats. And I was shocked by that because well the whole thing with the trafficking on what was that website with the furniture?
Craigslist.
No, well, there might be some with Craigslist, but there was
There's Backpage. Oh, you're talking about Wayfair. That was all blown away. That was totally a scam.
oh
That was QAnon.
oh
Total
the story
QAnon.
wasn't true.
The story was not true.
Okay, because I remember just being very confused, and I didn't do too much of a deep dive. Um, for some reason, trafficking, I think it's too scary, and so I just don't go there. And also, I have the privilege as a man that I don't worry about getting trafficked. Maybe one day when I'm very old, although they won't have much use for me then. But you know, we kind of go through society not worried about being attacked and trafficked. So I just haven't paid attention to it, and it's scary. But when I did kind of casually look, it didn't make a lot of sense. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. It was, yeah, that was a QAnon thing. So that wasn't real. There's plenty of real stuff going on.
What's some of the real stuff?
Well, so in my book is fiction. It's a suspense novel, but in my book, the girl is 15 years old and she's in the foster care system. And she this young man approaches her and starts kind of talking to her and flirting with her and meets her at her little brother's ball games and just starts courting her, and she feels like she's got a new boyfriend. She's and 60 to 70% of kids that get pulled into the trafficking world are products of the foster care system. So this is a very real story that I've made up, you know. So she gets pulled, she thinks she's got a boyfriend. He says he's going to take her away. He's going to pull her out of that awful foster home and they're going to go live together. And then they're going to send for her brother and all it's going to be great. And she sees him as a savior. And she runs away from the home and then he's not there. Two other men grab her and they pull her into this ring, this human trafficking ring. So what we know is, so that's not an uncommon story. They target vulnerable people. They target young women, young boys who are vulnerable, and of course, foster kids are looking for love and affection, and so they're highly vulnerable. And that's who they prey on. That's who they prey on. In terms of real stories, I've heard. I mean, in my work, I've heard so many. Just in my book, I also use the example of posting a notice up, looking for models. Come and audition to be a model. You could go to Europe and, appear in magazines. And these girls show up to audition to be a model and they're never seen again. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I write about.
Hmm. That's sad and scary.
Right. And I didn't, one of the challenges was I wanted to be authentic, but not make people want to put it away because it's too hard to think. Like you were saying, I can't deal with that. I don't want to think about it. So I decided to not be graphic about what happens. I try to kind of tone that down, but I do show the horror. I mean, just how the girls live in fear and the power that the traffickers have over them. Yeah. But yeah, it's really, and I want to wake people up to it. I want mothers to be awake and all of us, the community to be awake, that we have to look after the vulnerable ones. There's a 13-year-old girl and she looks like she doesn't have friends, and she might be targeted. Let's all keep an eye on her.
I think the word trafficking has recently come into pop culture and it wasn't before. Like trafficking's always existed, but it seems to be more mainstream now. Have you always known about trafficking or did you keep up with it as it came into pop culture?
I learned about it probably back in I learned the most about it back in 2016, 2017, when I was doing some work for social work to advocate for stronger anti-trafficking legislation in South Carolina. And I knew a little bit when I started getting involved, but the more I got involved and met law enforcement and advocates and survivors of trafficking and heard all these stories, I really became more aware and just, got kind of immersed in all that's going on, even just right here in South Carolina. But I would say prior to, like in the 1990s, it was still slavery, and it is, trafficking and slavery, they're the same thing.
I heard that I don't know if it would be called legalized trafficking or if this is even an example of trafficking, but like when they move foster children from one house to another so that each foster family gets the money that they get for the people that they are fostering. Have you heard of stuff like that in the foster care system?
No,
Yeah, someone like the community has mentioned it in town because they'll know of like when they'll finally adopt kids that they wanted to get out of the
yeah.
system, but they will have gone to six families before they got to them. And so I think what's happening is, say if me and you were foster families in the system and we had two separate households, I would take the kids for a month and get money, and then they would move over to your house and you would have them for a month and get money, and then it would go to someone else.
Oh, that's awful.
I think that's something that they're doing because I know a family in town that that's what they assumed was happening was that different foster families were making money because when they finally got the kids, they had been like to six or seven homes. And I
That's
think,
awful.
is that kind of trafficking?
No, that's not trafficking. That's just a very dysfunctional foster care system. That's just very dysfunctional.
I've there's also something else that I've seen. Apparently, people can sign up to be they can house immigrants that come in from like whether they're refugees or something. And I'll see people that will have like where I work, I'm not going to say it on this episode, but it's on other episodes. They'll have like 16 people that are living at their house. And the American is in charge of getting their paperwork together. And they must, I mean, I don't think they're doing it from the goodness of their heart. They must be getting some kind of fee. It just seems like 16 people at someone's house is too many people.
Oh, yeah, that's not healthy. And that would be a good opportunity because those are very vulnerable people. So that's
Mm.
a very good opportunity for trafficking to happen.
So yeah, that's wild things that are going on. The orchid tattoo, how long ago did that come out?
It came out last year. It's September of 2022.
All right. So does your publisher consider that one done, or is it still, are they still marketing it?
I do most of the marketing, to be honest. I think that's the way of the world these days. So I do most of the marketing and I'm still very much marketing it. And we're getting ready to do an audiobook. So that'll be another push, another marketing push. So yeah, it's still alive and ticking. I do
All
a
right, that's
ton
good.
of book clubs and presentations and things like that. I really enjoy doing that.
All right, that's good to hear because the new Caleb Knowles is out.
Yeah, it just came out last month.
It seems like there is a lot of um, there's a lot of activity around Carla Damron on social media, especially with these two books. It seems like they're both hot.
Thank you. They're both hot because I have someone helping me with my social media. Here's the thing, Robert. here's the thing. Having someone who's like 25 and lives in that world help you with that, she just knows how to get me out there, which is not something I knew how to do. I mean, I have my friends, I knew how to post pictures of my cat, you know, but she has really been very good about, how to just keep the rhythm up. She sends me a plan every month, and I'm just so relieved to have somebody that knows what they're doing it. That's what I've learned when it comes to publicizing and marketing your book. I'm not really good at that. So I find someone that is.
Tell us about the new Caleb Knowles book.
Hmm. So this is the fourth in the Caleb Null series. It's called Justice Be Done. Justice Be Done is a quote from the late Senator Clementa Pinckney. And like I said before, everything I write deals with social issues. In my other life, I'm a social worker. So that's going to happen whether I want it to or not. I'm going to be writing about social issues. In this book, the genesis was two things. One was a couple of summers ago when we were having race riots in South Carolina related to one of the hate crimes that happened in another state. It was just a response that spilled over to lots of communities. And we were having riots in downtown, and that just really stunned me that we were having riots in 2021. And then the other thing was I had a dream. I hadn't done a Caleb Knowles book in several years. And suddenly I dreamed a scene between Caleb and his brother Sam that became the second part of the opening scene of this book. But I wanted to honor Clementa Pinckney. He was the pastor of the AME Church in Charleston, the Mother Emanuel AME Church. And he was gunned down by Dylan Roof. Him and 8 other people were gunned down by Dylan Roof, who was just in a hate crime. He was a radicalized young man who brought a gun in and gunned these people down. And Clementa Pinckney was, in addition to being a pastor, was a state senator. And he was a very quiet, reasonable man who truly believed that we could heal what's happening between the races, and that he died this way was really horrific. So he's not a character in this book, but his legacy is a theme in this book. And it deals with a hate crime that results in protests that evolve into riots. And the riots keep happening because the tensions just keep boiling. And in that backdrop, a cop is murdered. And so, Caleb's goal is to if we don't find who killed this cop, the race riots are just going to get much, much more violent. And then there's also people kind of capitalizing on the violence. Another theme to the book is, why is it that we don't resolve these racial issues? It's been since the Civil War in the South. There's still this tension that bubbles up and becomes, so volatile. And why is that? Why do we not make peace? Why do we continue to see the person of the other race as an other instead of one of us? And so that's something else that theme I try to explore as well.
I've often wondered that as well, because we've seen in other countries where it changed a group of people, after so many centuries of two races living together. And specifically, I think about Sicily. You have the
Mm-hmm.
Northern Italians that are blonde and blue-eyed, and then you have Sicilians that are olive skinned. And it's because when they ran the Moors out, they didn't get them all the way out of Italy, or some were allowed to stay to convert and things like that. Queen Isabella in Spain ran out um, many, many people unless they converted to Catholicism or Christianity or whatever it
Yeah.
was they considered it. So you have Spanish people that probably don't look like the Spanish people before the Crusades. So I kind of wonder if maybe, the powers that be are kind of just keeping us from blending. We are blending a little bit, because I see lots of people that are, in their 70s now, and they have a mixed grandchild. I just wonder how much of that would be, natural. Like in New Orleans, I don't know if you know much about New Orleans, but they had Code Noir. Have you ever heard of that before?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Code Noir was, it means code black, and it was the way that the French treated the institution of slavery. And there were all these different rules. If you, and I learned this on a tour of the Garden District. I recommend the Garden District Historic
Oh yeah.
Tour. Don't go for the voodoo tour. Well, the voodoo tour is good. Don't go for the ghost tours. Those are all made up to scare you, but they're not that scary. But the Historic Garden District Tour is amazing. And what people did was slaves, if you had a slave, they could work outside of the home and earn money and they could buy their freedom. They had Sundays off. And if the slave master wanted to marry the slave, he had to get the permission of the slave's mother. And then if she agreed, then the slave would be freed and she would have her own house and she would keep her own name, but her kids would be heirs to the fortune. And I can't there that kind of marriage was called a plaçage agreement.
Fascinating.
Yes. So often you had a man who would be married traditionally, and then he would have a plaçage, and they were called his natural family. And then there were some people um, that never had a marriage. They only had a plaçage. And so there are segregated cemeteries in New Orleans, and some of them, like if the man died first, then the woman in the plaçage could be married. I'm getting this incorrect, but I know that there's mixing in the segregated cemeteries because maybe the woman in the plaçage died first, and so then
Oh yeah.
the man decided to be buried with her. And then there's another man who was brothers to a man in a plaçage, and so he got buried next to his brother. So there's two white men in this black cemetery, or either the woman in the plaçage was in the white cemetery with the two white brothers. I can't remember, but they were mixing, and then you had a lot of mixed people, and they were a little bit of a different animal as far as the way they walked around through society. And what's the famous woman's name? I don't know why I can't remember. You put the X's on her tomb.
I don't know.
She was a famous, um, she's a famous voodoo priestess.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and there were two of them. The first one made herbs, and she had a Catholic father and an African mother who did African diaspora religions, and they used herbs for their menstrual cycles. And so she was able to bridge the two communities in selling potions for the white people to have
Oh yeah.
an easier time during that time of the month. And then Marie Laveau, that was her name, Marie Laveau. Then this Marie Laveau's daughter changed her name to Marie Laveau too, and she started selling potions to curse people and also to get rid of
Ooh,
the curses. So she created a different business, and that is what started the voodoo culture of New Orleans.
that's fascinating. What a great, interesting story.
I know. It just blew my mind when I heard that. So I don't have it all right. So don't come for me in the comments. But at least you can, if you're listening to this and you're
Yeah,
curious
yeah,
about it, you can go do your own research. I'm telling that to the people that are watching this. They'll get you. Also, if you're
yeah.
chewing, they'll get you in the comments too. But that was like a very organic situation, and the people were finding out ways to be in love and to share your life with somebody and to make a living. And we're seeing something weird in the South, like it's happening a little bit, but not. I mean, it's been almost 200 years since the abolition.
The thing I remember it was a startling moment for me. I remember the day after Obama was elected the first time, and I worked in a large government office. And my boss came to my office, and he knew that I had supported Obama. He came in my office and closed the door, and he was just so upset. He said, "How could you support a man who's going to take all my money away from me? He's going to go after all our money. We're not going to have any money." And I'm like, and it was so unreasonable. This is a very reasonable man, but this was so unreasonable, and I saw this kind of paranoia, this like generations old, that if a black person gets in power, horrible things are going to happen to white people. And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. He's not going to take all your money. That's how could he? but it was just that fear. And it's like, that was really gripping for me. It's like, and he had never presented himself as a racist in any way. But that moment, I was like, I'm seeing a level of him I had never seen before. And I'm like, there are a lot of people that have that level and we don't see it. Although now it's kind of become okay to show it more. It was kind of scary. There's sort of it's okay to be racist theme going on in America that worries me. But yeah, I feel like we've taken a few steps backwards. We really need a giant leap forward.
When you said that it's okay to be racist, what came to mind was that song from the play Avenue Q, no pun intended, from 2004. Do you remember that play?
I think I saw it 100 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it too. And it was also 100 years ago. We might have been in the audience at the same time. Did you see it in New York?
No, no.
'Cause I saw it in New York. And they had a song, Everybody's a Little Bit Racist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's when things were a little bit different in America. We could joke about that. There
Yeah,
was
exactly.
there
Yeah.
was also a joke in Will and Grace around that same time, and they like Will was going to support a gay candidate and Grace was supporting the woman candidate. And then they were like having these dual fundraisers in the apartment. And as soon as they started speaking, the gay man and then the white woman, they had these horrible, horrible policies. And Will and Grace were like so embarrassed. And they were like, you know what? This is it. We're not going to support politicians anymore. We should have done our research. We can't just support them based on these kind of things. And then Jack comes in and says, y'all didn't go vote. They're like, no, we don't deserve to vote. And he said, there's a black guy running. And then they just ran out of the apartment to go vote.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, that was funny. But getting back to the Caleb Knowles, this is the first Caleb Knowles mystery post MFA.
Right.
Are you seeing how are the responses to this when compared to the other ones?
I would say this has been much more complex to write. Um, I'm using several POVs and I had to get like a sensitivity reader because it's being a white person writing about race. You just kind of need to do that. I'd say the reviews have been really positive, but a lot of, oh, good Lord, this is making me think, or there are moments where this is uncomfortable. And that wasn't really true of the other ones, you know. The other ones, like the one, Death in Zooville, which was dealt with homeless, unhoused people, unsheltered people. I had a review from a reader that said, I just finished your book and I made a donation to the local homeless shelter. And I was like, that's the best review I could have gotten. So the other things have not been as controversial as this one. This one, you know, I say it's my most bannable book because I'm diving into these issues that some people are going to have a hard time with.
But you've certainly stepped into it with the trafficking, these hot button issues, and now you've got into race. You're always going to be a friend of mine. If you get canceled, you know, down the road or something, I'm going to support you no matter what. So
Thank you. Thank you.
that's it. And if I get canceled for supporting you, it's okay. I jokingly say that I can't be canceled. I'll just work at the Piggly Wiggly. It's no
There
big
we
deal.
go. There's always a Piggly Wiggly.
Right. And they're independently owned. And if you were to like tell the manager, someone was mean on social media or so and so wrote a book that I don't agree with, like they're not going to care. They're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
trying to get that meat put out to sell it on Black
Exactly.
Friday.
Exactly. Cut my roast beef.
Right. Thank you for your concern. How do you want that sliced?
Exactly. Exactly.
Where do you see, speaking of careers, and that would be like that would be our second careers if we get canceled. Where do you
Yeah.
see your career going from here until the end?
I want to keep writing. I hope I keep writing. I've retired twice professionally. I still have one little small part-time job. I don't think I want another full-time job, so that gives me more time to write, which I love. That's really good. But I like doing it on my own schedule, and I like having time to travel and things like that. Although I always write when I travel too. So I just want to keep doing what I'm doing at my own pace. I don't want to have a deadline. If I have a deadline, I want it to be mine. Um, and I've given up on that dream of being published by the big five publishers or big four or however big two. I don't know how many there are right now. You know, that feels unrealistic. But if I can write stuff that makes people think and I can write stuff that still entertains, then I feel really fulfilled. That's what I want.
What is the best thing about being Carla Damron?
The best thing about being Carla Damron. I have a great husband. I'm lucky that way. I have an amazing group of readers that invite me to their book clubs and let me talk about, and like when I've been talking about the orchid tattoo, they talk about the book for 10 minutes. And then for 40 minutes, we talk about what are we going to do about this human trafficking problem? And I love it that people get fired up and ready to combat this horrible issue that we need, I mean, this horrible crime that we need to combat. And so I like it that I can do that. I like it that I can make people think and get people inspired and feel that they can make a difference. We can all make a difference if we apply ourselves. So that's what I think is the most important thing about me right now.
Would you say that the purpose of your art is a call to action?
Yes, I like to say it's crime fiction that makes a difference. That's what I call it.
I like that. We talked about writing more and you wanting to write more. Just so, and I know a little bit about your writing routine, but how would you describe your writing routine or your writing rituals for maybe people that are curious about how you're doing it?
Yeah, so I usually get up and have a cup of coffee, and I like to read first before I start writing. And then I come down here. This is my little downstairs daylight basement office. And there's a gate at the top of the stairs that keeps my really bad cat from coming down and unplugging the computer, which he does. So I lock the gate so he can't come. So he's at the gate howling usually to come down. And then I write here at the computer. I usually just do it on a desktop. Sometimes I go outside with my laptop if it's a nice day. I'm real involved with the mystery Women's Fiction Writers Association, and we do write-ins where you get on Zoom with a bunch of writers and you write together. I do that probably 4 or 5 times a week. I love it. I love that community of writers. I love talking. I mean, because writing can be very solitary, and I'm kind of social. So I love being with a group of writers, and we'll talk for a few minutes, and then we turn the camera off. We write for an hour and a half. Then we come back on and we talk about what we accomplished and then anything else related to writing. So that's become a real support group for me. And it's just like I kind of treat it like my job. I need to be out of my pajamas in time for the write-in. So and I usually write 6 to 7 days a week. I'm pretty committed to it. The other thing I do is, and I tell this to writers all the time, writing isn't always just writing. Writing is thinking too. So, always keep your book in your brain. Always be thinking of it. If you can't sit down and write, think about your characters. Think about what's going to happen next. Play the what if game. What if this happened? What would happen to my characters? Or what if this happened and then this happened? And just kind of see which of those tracks you need to go down next. So writing isn't just sitting at the computer. Writing is keeping your brain engaged and involved in the story.
When you do one of those hour and a half writing sessions, how many words do you get or pages?
It depends. Probably 2 or 3 pages. I don't get a whole, I'm not a fast writer. Sometimes I edit a little bit during that. Sometimes I'll listen to my book. Sometimes I'll just have the book be playing and get on my treadmill. I consider that all part of it. And I'll make edits. I'll stop the treadmill, come and make an edit, and then run and get back on the treadmill. So yeah, I'll get a bunch done. It's a focus time, but it really doesn't. As long as it's involved with writing, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be drafting, you could be revising, you could be listening, you could do marketing.
Do you have an agent?
I do, although the publisher for Orchid Tattoo, I found myself. So I found the publisher, and she negotiated the deal. So I found that I've done a lot of my work, even when I've had agents. I've done a lot of because when you're dealing with small indie presses, that's less motivation for the agents to do that because there's not much money for them. But it's nice to have one that you can consult with.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the end of the interview, and Paul Leslie recommends letting the guest take over the show to say what's ever on her mind or her heart knowing that it has the potential to reach anybody in the world at any time between now when it gets published and this video gets published and the future, maybe 400 years from now. So, with that being said, the show is yours.
Oh, what a frightening thing. I should sing. No, what I would do, what I'd like to say is, what's wonderful about being a writer is, for me, I don't have children that are not four-legged. All my children are four-legged. So, but I do kind of look at these books as what I'm leaving behind. And the way publishing works now, things are kind of being printed in perpetuity, right? So it's nice to think that I've got 6 novels that are out there that are hopefully reaching people. And it's like a piece of me is reaching all of these people. And that's really gratifying, unless they hate it, and in which case they're rejecting that piece of me. But mostly I get really, really nice comments from readers and stuff like that. And it's a very special thing. Whenever I release a book, like when I just released this one, I'm so nervous because it's like, what if they hate it? What if people don't love it? And I was, and it was a while before I got any reviews, and I was like, oh my God, people hate my book. But no, it's like people are having to think and, mull. And then like I went to choir the other night, and the first 5 minutes of the choir was a debate about my books. So it was definitely stirring things up for people. So I love that legacy. I love that my words will go on, will be here in the world when I'm not. And that's a very special thing.
Thank you, Carla Damron.
Thank you, Robert. This has been a lot of fun.